Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of How Monotone Can My Voice Get? This is the story of how my neighbor showed me his science experiments in his apartment late at night. It was a weeknight around 9 p.m. when I was taking out my garbage to the dumpster at my apartment, and standing next to someone's open window talking into it was that one neighbor that I thought would kill me in his apartment. Check out that video if you haven't already. I'll link it in the description below. Um, he was just standing in some bushes, casually talking to one of my neighbors through his open window, and I went through my garbage in the dumpster, and then on my way back inside, my neighbor struck up a conversation with me. He was drunk by his own admission, so he was very jolly, and he was very excited about the upcoming Halloween. He pulled out his phone and told me he had to show me his costume from last year. He scrolled for about several minutes while searching for a picture of his costume. He had dressed up as an old crazy guy, but he was mostly proud of his movie quality mask and told me he'd probably wear it again this year. And he then casually invited me to a party this upcoming Halloween, but I was going back to my hometown that weekend. I was like, nah, man, I can't make it. And plus, I probably don't want to go to a party with this guy in the middle of COVID or at all in generally. But that's beside the point. But then after we were done talking about Halloween, he then pulled out a Ziploc bag with a bunch of blue powder in it, and it was like a crystallized blue powder kind of. And he said very quietly, "Hey, look at my Miracle Grow." But I didn't quite hear him right the first time, so I was just thinking, wow, that looks like the druggiest of drugs. And I was like, wait, what is that? Is that meth? And he's like, no, 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 it's Miracle Grow. Apparently, he just keeps a bag of Miracle Grow in his pocket at 9 p.m. on a weekday for his tomatoes. I don't know. But then he asked me if I was into math equations and science experiments and things of that nature. And I said something like, well, math was my favorite subject back in school, but I don't really do any science experiments or anything like that. And then he described how he was really into science and science experiments, and then he discussed that for a little bit longer. But then he asked me if I wanted to go back to his apartment to check out his science experiments, and I had zero information on what these experiments were, why he wanted to show them to me, and for some reason I did not think, maybe you shouldn't go back into this apartment with him this time. Nah, for some reason I was once again just asking to be the next human centipede or something. So I went back to his apartment with them without asking any questions. And once again, he showed me his posters on his walls that he collected once we got back into his apartment. I mentioned this in the last video that I did, so check that out. His so-called science experiments were actually just lights that changed colors occasionally. He also did have a collection of Edison bulbs and different lights of that nature, but that's all his science experiments were just lights that pretty much change colors. But right as I was about to go home after seeing his science show, he asked if I had ever seen Boogie Nights. And I hadn't, so he grabbed the movie and he popped it into his DVD player. And then he described the basis of the movie to me. To simplify what he said, he pretty much just said Mark Wahlberg's got a pretty big dick in this movie and he becomes a porn star. But he said it several times throughout the explanation of the movie. So that was great. He was very enamored with the size of Mark Wahlberg's penis. So that's interesting. He then offered me a drink while he poured himself another rum and coke, and I politely declined. Once the movie was going, he started doing dishes in the kitchen while I just sat and watched the movie. I could hear his breathing even over the sound of running water and the movie. And once he had finished the dishes, he started once again telling me more about the movie. The overall plot is about how Mark Wahlberg becomes a porn star, so sex was on his mind. He told me that he had found sex very interesting and pulled out a book that was solely dedicated to different forms of sex and sex among different types of animals. Luckily, I wasn't high at the moment, or else paranoid me would be absolutely freaking out at this time, but I was completely sober at this time, so I was not quite as paranoid, but I was still trying to get out of there relatively quickly. So I told him that I probably had to take off soon and that I couldn't actually stay for the entire movie because it was a weeknight and it was pretty late. So he insisted that I had to see certain parts of the movie, so he started fast forwarding through certain parts so I could see the important parts of the movie. And after about another 15 minutes of going through important parts of the movie, I told him I had to leave, and then I just went back to my apartment. Um, but luckily, I had once again survived another trip to his apartment, and luckily, I was not subject to Human Centipede 2.0.